It's Atsuna here, and I'm going to do a quick little demo of how I use my presets and action. So this is the image that I'll be working on, and for this specific image, I will be using Berry City. Now, Berry City is the preset that I use most often, and it's intended for photos at urban locations with a lot of buildings and something more modern. It definitely has cooler tones, while Cozy Nature, on the other hand, it definitely has warmer tones, and it's much better for photos with more trees, flowers, and the ocean. So anything that's more naturey. So I'm gonna hop in and start editing this photo because you always need to tweak the photo even after you apply the preset. And for this specific photo, I definitely need to bump up the exposure. I set it to 1.1 and it's already looking a lot better. And one thing that I always do to all my photos is the adjustment brush. I always make some changes using the adjustment brush. Now, I will bump up the clarity 100% and the sharpness to 100%, and you can scroll down to change the brush size, feather, and flow. And what I like to do is you have to click on Show Selected Mask Overlay so that where you highlight, it'll be red so you can see what you're coloring. And with the clarity and sharpness to 100%, I always paint the background and parts of my clothes for all my photos. And this is something I do because I feel like it really brings out the detail and texture, and it boosts the contrast as well. So I'm going to paint all of the background like so. And I'm also going to get the CN Tower. This photo was shot in Toronto, if you guys are curious to know. Okay, there. Click off Show Selected Mask Overlay, and this is what it looks like now. So I'm going to add a new mask and setting the clarity to 0 and sharpness to 0. And I'm going to bring up the highlights to 30. And I'm going to use, clicking Show Selected Mask Overlay again because it makes it so much easier to see what you're painting. I'm going to get all of the sky. Now, this is just something I would do for this specific photo because I feel like the sky is looking a little gray after using my preset. So I will just get the sky. And I just want to emphasize again that bumping up the clarity and sharpness for the background and parts of my clothes is something I do to all my photos, and be sure to set it to about 50 to 100%. Usually I do 100%, but it depends on the photo and how much contrast it needs. And now, after hitting Show Selected Mask Overlay, this is what it looks like. I didn't get this top part, seems like, but it's already looking so much better, the photo. Now, I'm going to add another new mask, clicking Show Selected Mask Overlay. I want to get my t-shirt because I want to bring up the brightness for my t-shirt as well. One thing I would also advise to do is to create a separate mask for each part of the photo you're trying to fix. So in this case, I kept a separate mask for the sky and t-shirt so that I can set the highlight to different numbers. And in case I need to make additional changes to the t-shirt alone, like bringing down the saturation if the shadow has like a blue tint or something. So definitely section off your photos when you use the adjustment brush. And the highlight is already set to 30, so this is what this image looks like. Now, scrolling down, I also always like to make changes to the color section. Basically, it has all of the colors in the rainbow, and you can tweak each color individually, the hue, saturation, and luminance. For this specific image, I would bump up the saturation for blue, and you can see how that made the saturation of the pants pop. I would probably bring some color back to my skin with the orange. So I changed it to -10. So if you want to make changes to your skin, that's always with the color orange, in my experience at least, maybe with my skin tone. But this is the final look for this image, and I'll show you a before and after. This is what it looks like before and after. As you can see, it's a huge difference, and I really like how it looks, and I'm going to export it to my desktop now. Now this is completely optional, but I also like to do a final color grade on my Photoshop with the images I edit on Lightroom. So I'm going to open up that Photoshop file. Let's see if I open. This is what it looks like. And using my Photoshop action, this as well, you can change the opacity for each layer. Typically what I always do on all of my images is I make changes to the curves and black and white layer. So curves, quite often I set the opacity to 0 because I already created a curves for my Lightroom, and what this does on the Photoshop one, it just makes it more faded, if you can see. Yeah. If you bump up the opacity, it looks more faded, and that's something I like to do with my images because it gives it more of a filmy look, but I've already applied a very similar curve to my Lightroom. But if you want that additional more faded look, you can go ahead and change the opacity here. For this one, I'm just going to set it to 0 for the curves. Next is black and white, and I typically leave it or lower it. So for this, I'm going to set it to 10%. And I like how that looks. I'm going to create a folder to dump all of these layers in so you can see a before and after. So this is what it looks like before, after, before, after, before, after. So this is what I do to edit my photos using my preset and action, and I hope you enjoy using them as much as I do.